And here's our first question. Everybody ready? Say yes. Yes. Okay. First question. Here we go. And this again will be for Senator Lori Schiff. First of all, our introductions will go for Ms. Kelly. You have, right now, 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think I stand up so you can see me and I can see you. I am Laura Kelly. I am a state senator from Topeka. Been that for 14 years. But in addition to that, I'm also a wife and a mother and a very proud daughter of an Army, career Army guy. As I was growing up, we lived all over the world. As a matter of fact, by the time I was 6, I had lived on 3 continents. My very first language was Japanese. But to this date, the only word I can remember is yakamashi, and it means shut up. I think my brother and sister said that to me a lot. But anyway, when my husband and I married, we were living in Denver. We had our first child, and we thought we really wanted to put down roots. And Kansas became the obvious choice for us, and for 2 particular reasons. One, because of the great sense of community that one has here in the state of Kansas like no other place. And 2, with the great public schools. Both of my daughters got a world-class education by being taught by great teachers in our great schools. And that is exactly why I am running for governor right now, is because I want every Kansas kid to have the same opportunities to succeed that my daughters had when we were here. And you know, fighting for children has been a lifelong mission for me. When I first got out of school, I went to work with kids struggling with serious mental illness. And I've continued my work through the legislature by fighting for our schools, fighting for early childhood, fighting for after-school programs. And when the foster care system was clearly failing our Kansas kids, I sounded the alarm, and I sounded it loud. I demanded answers, demanded accountability. This went really quickly, so is that a 1-minute card, or I'm dead stop? We'll talk more later.
I'm gonna yank it. There we go. Good evening, I'm Josh Swati. It's a pleasure to be here. If you believe that the Democratic Party needs to present a positive vision for the future of the state, and have that carried forward by people that represent that future, join Swati Lewison. If you believe that the Democratic Party should be statewide and not just a handful of next-door neighbors in Topeka, Kansas, join Swati Lewison. If you believe that the Democratic Party needs to be more than a group of people that get together every 2 years for an election watch party that ends in disappointment, join Swati Lewison. I'm Joshua Swati. I grew up on a farm in central Kansas. I'm the 5th generation to farm there. I served 7 years in the Kansas legislature. I'm the only candidate up here this evening that's run a state agency. I was our state secretary of agriculture. I was a senior advisor at the Environmental Protection Agency. I was vice president of the Land Institute. And I'm running because I care about this state. I also happen to have the most exciting lieutenant governor, Republican or Democrat, across the state of Kansas. She's Katrina Lewison. She grew up in Hutchinson, Kansas. She's a West Point graduate. She served her country flying Black Hawk helicopters in Iraq. She came home, taught at West Point, and then she and her husband moved back to Kansas, where they live in Manhattan, are raising their 3 daughters, and she's on the Manhattan School Board. We will not rest until we campaign statewide to make sure everyone recognizes that the state that we believe in, the open state, the forward-thinking state, the progressive state that we have all been proud of for 150 years is back. And we're going to do that. We've been doing that for over a year, and you're going to see that energy this evening. And once again, I encourage you, if you like that energy, if you like that enthusiasm, if you like a Democrat that can actually win a statewide race, join Swati Lewison.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm Carl Brewer, and I'm working to be your next governor here for the state of Kansas. And I want to say, you know, it's so nice to see so many familiar faces here today that have joined us and speaking up. And I'm very excited about that. Just to give you a little information about me, I know most of you may know me because the fact I was the mayor here is certainly, I'm the 2-term mayor here in the city of Wichita, the only Democrat that's ever done that. But then taking it a step farther, I've had an opportunity to see firsthand how policy decisions in Topeka and Washington, D.C. have affected our families and our communities. And not only that, but during the worst recession, I was the one, when they made bad policy decisions and we couldn't find them, I was the one there listening to you and working with you as we addressed and how we were going to be able to fix that, and we worked our way through that. Yeah. We did that. I've been married to my wife for 38 years, and I have to make sure I got that correct because she sits in the audience. And I have 12 grandchildren, 13 grandchildren, and then also 5 great-grandchildren. I have 4 children, 2 boys, 2 girls. And I also have one of my grandchildren that's in the audience, and she's monitoring me also. Let me know if we're doing wrong today. The thing is we're in a difficult time here in the state of Kansas, and under poor leadership, we have certainly had for the past 7 years. And no one has stood up for us and helped us during those difficult times. We had to make it ourselves. I had to reach out and to help other communities throughout this entire state and to be able to survive it and to be able to make it. So we have to have somebody that can provide strong leadership. I've had that from the military, serving 21 years, from going from grassroots as a private, digging foxholes, being an officer in the government. I come from corporate America, and then not only that, I've served in labor unions. And so you're looking for someone that's going to have strong leadership, that'll be a voice for you, and someone willing to work for you and represent each and every one of you.
All right, our first question, and Josh, you're going to lead off, followed by Carl, followed by Senator Kelly. Here's your first question. The Kansas Democratic Party and Democratic candidates consistently emphasize education as a top priority. In your view, what are the top issues facing the education system in Kansas right now, and how would you address them as governor?
Number one issue, we have to improve the pipeline of young people that want to enter teaching and serve there as an entire career. We had 1,500 teacher vacancies at the beginning of the school year last year. We cannot sustain that. We're losing young people that want to enter the profession for a number of reasons. One, it's salary. This isn't rocket science. You have to pay people appropriately to make them want to serve as a teacher. 2, it's due process. They need to know that they're going to be protected in the classroom. And then 3, you have to have an administration, a governor, that respects the profession, so that those young people, when they're in their high school years, even wondering, what do I want to do with my life, are thinking, this is a stable place where I can put down roots, and provide a great career, and maybe even raise a family. We have not been doing that as a state. Number 2, we have to make sure that we are taking advantage of the good things that are happening in education right now. We have the Kansas CAN program, which is an opportunity to rethink what the classroom of the future looks like. These are sometimes decisions that don't cost any money, but there are school districts redesigning how they educate children to make sure that they are best prepared to either enter the workforce or enter higher education, and they need a governor that supports that. And then 3, we absolutely have to make sure that we come through on our commitment to financing public education. The state legislature did a pretty good job this last year given the financial constraints the state's in, but we know the state has been chronically underfunding K-12 education. It is the #1 budget item in the state. That's by design, because this state historically has always said it's the most important thing that we do, and it's been one of our greatest selling points because we don't have oceans and we don't have mountains, but we educate our kids really well, and we have incredible communities because of it, and we need a governor that is dedicated to making sure that we push forward hard on K-12.
Mr. Brewer, you want the question repeated, sir?
Good.
Okay.
The entire time I've talked about education during the entire time I was mayor, we recognize, and we've had independents coming here during the worst recession of this country to talk about what helps communities grow. Everyone talks about good jobs to grow the economy. Everyone talks about excellent infrastructure. We all talk about that. But the other portion is that's equally important is making sure that we have adequate water supply, adequate streets, adequate transportation, is an educated workforce. And the only way you can have an educated workforce is we have to invest in schools. Now, we have not done a very good job whether we like it or not, under this past 7 years, they have not funded education the way it should be. Whether it's providing the children with, and our children, with the things that they actually need to get an adequate education, whether we provided teachers with an adequate salary to be able to, where their focus is on making sure that our children, we must make sure that we do those types of things. We know what the total dollar figure is that we actually need, but we're not communicating it to our employers, each and every one of you, what that dollar figure is for us to get to where we need to be. But then, what is our overall plan to get there to 10 years from now? We must provide that information. We must come up with a strategy and a goal to be able to get from where we're at to where we're breaking even, from being below at the very bottom, but we can keep teachers here, we can provide the students with adequate education, and getting the best education they can, because the reality of things is our children aren't competing against Oklahoma or Missouri or Colorado. They're competing with the rest of the world. And it's our job as leaders in our community, as fathers in our community, to be able to create an environment where they get the best education that they can so they can go and compete with the rest of the world. We don't have an environment like it used to be years ago where corporate America was loyal to us. They're no longer loyal to us. They're looking for the best, they're looking for the brightest, and we need to make sure that we provide them with the best and brightest. And the only way that's going to happen is if we invest in education and we do the right thing. Not sit up and talk about it and wish about it. Let's come up with a strategy and a plan, and we owe it to you to tell you what it is that needs to be done. And so you need a governor that's committed to that and clearly understands that that's equally important as the infrastructure needs that we have here.
You know, I came to Kansas 32 years ago because of the schools. The schools are not the same as they were 32 years ago because we have systematically underfunded them. When I'm governor, we will make sure that we fulfill our pledge. Hopefully the court will accept what we provided them then, and we built into the formula a regular cost of living increase, consumer price index, so that we never go back to court again. We never renege on a promise to our kids. I'll also tell you that I'm a major believer in early childhood intervention and prevention, and I will focus heavily on that. You actually here in Wichita are very fortunate to have an innovative program called the TOPS program. That's the Opportunity Project that one of your business leaders, Barry Downing, created a public-private partnership where they're taking kids into these early childhood centers actually prenatally, before the child is even born. They're contracting with these families to make sure that those kids, those families have the wraparound services they need so that by the time that kid is 5, that kid will be succeeding in kindergarten and beyond. It will save us money in the long run, it will decrease our special education costs, and it will decrease our incarceration costs. So that will be a major focus. On the other end of the spectrum, I will also focus heavily on career and tech ed, because I believe that there is a great need for that, not only for our kids who don't want to go to college, want to build a trade, but it's also imperative for our businesses. If we want to attract businesses here, what do we have to offer them but a trained workforce? So we will put a heavy emphasis on early childhood and career and tech ed.
Okay, our second question tonight is as follows. The news is full of stories about children who have died as a result of systematic failures within the Kansas Department of Children and Families. As governor, what steps will you take to address issues within DCF and other state agencies involved in protecting our kids? Carl Brewer.
Well, certainly, as all of you know, I've got the first-hand class on understanding where our system is broken when it comes to our children. But as I've traveled the entire state, I've had an opportunity to visit with a lot of different families, whether they be grandparents, or whether they be aunts and uncles, or brothers and sisters, of individuals that have lost their family members in the state system. We must come up with, one, a way to be able to create transparency. We must create transparency when it comes to our children. Secondly, taking a step further, I know that everyone wants to focus on DCF. It's more than DCF. We have to come up with a clear way of being able to fix the entire system, from The law enforcement agencies, the multiple law enforcement agencies, come up with a clear process for that, and going into the courts, how courts actually handle it, and also dealing with DCF. And when they're investigating, how investigations are done. And we have to keep clear and precise records as to what's going on and what's happening. But then taking it a step farther, when we start looking at our children that are being taken out of homes and out of families for various different reasons, we should know, each of us, where our children are at all times. At all times. There should be no way that we have 73 children that are sitting out there that we don't have the slightest clue here in Kansas where they're at. We don't even know if they're in the United States anymore. And it takes weeks and months before individuals ever report it. That is unacceptable. We start to have to hold individuals accountable. But we have come with a clear, standard process as to what it is, but not only for the courts and law enforcement and DCF and the counseling agencies to know, we need to know so that when we see it, there's a response. Because most often, we've already seen where individuals go to a home after a complaint has been done, and they're not going in and saying that this child needs to be taken to a hospital. They take the person's word, and they walk away. We as Kansans owe it to our children that it's our job to protect them.
The answer to the problem in our DCF system, our foster care system, our entire child welfare system starts at the top. We need a governor who understands the system, who knows the system, and appreciates what needs to be done in that system. We have had the absolute worst leadership in the Department of Children and Families for 7.5 years. That needs to change. That's part of the reason that we have so many of the problems that we have, just really poor leadership. The other thing that we have done as a legislature, I didn't vote for, but we have taken the safety net out from beneath our most vulnerable families, and we have created some of the problems in our foster care system by defunding our agencies to a ridiculous amount. We don't have social workers to do family preservation. We don't have social workers to do reintegration in either the biological family or an adopted family. We passed the HOPE Act, which stripped out from these vulnerable families cash assistance, food stamps, child care assistance, the very things that allowed them to keep their family together. When Brownback came into office, there were 5,000 kids in the foster care system. That sounds like a lot, nothing compared to now. Now there are 7,800 kids stuck in our foster system. Some of them missing, some of them dead, but all of them locked into a system because we don't provide the resources to get them out. As governor, I will ensure that we do exactly that. We did set up a child welfare task force last year. We put off making any final recommendations until 2019 because we knew the current administration would sabotage all efforts we made for reform, but we will have those recommendations on the table in January and we will implement them.
One, we need a governor that appoints a head of the Department of Children and Families that is a dedicated Kansan, that is absolutely focused on running that agency well, not someone that's practicing out their PhD thesis that may have come from Florida, which we've been dealing with for the last 8 years. Two, I have called for many months for the creation of an independent state auditor. I am supportive of the work of the Legislative Post Audit, but they are still beholden to the legislature. We need an independent state auditor looking at these state agencies constantly, making sure that everything is as transparent as possible. And three, I think this is the most important to fix not only DCF, but all the state agencies. It was my honor when I was serving as Secretary of Agriculture to go to work every single day with dedicated civil servants that were there. Sometimes they had their master's, sometimes they had their PhD, and they were working hard to make government work better for all Kansans. And when you disrespect them, and when you pay them poorly, and when you shift their offices around, you begin to lose the critically important employees that make those agencies run. And I'm sorry, these aren't simply warm bodies that you can plop in and make these jobs work. At the Department of Agriculture, when you start to lose people that know what's going on, you lose track of the paperwork of water rights, and you don't get your gas meters checked fast enough. But when we talk about the Department of Children and Families, that becomes our children. Our children. And as I've said before, we can never attain our state's motto, to the stars through difficulties, if we're leaving must stop. And it means having good people that are dedicated to families and figuring out the difficulty of social work in those positions. And you can't have them if you have an administration that is not concerned with the civil servants that come to work every single day and make that happen. And we are living through that for the last 8 years, and we all know it because we see it every single day in the news, whether it's DCF, corrections, or any other state agency. We need better people in those positions, and they won't come unless they feel like they have an administration that will protect them.
And our third question, leading off with Senator Laura Kelly. The media has lately focused on the referral and the refusal, of Governor Collier's discuss expanding Medicaid. Do you think what Kansas can expand Medicaid with our existing budget crisis? Do you think so? What do you propose as a solution to ensure that all Kansans have access to affordable health insurance?
Okay, first of all, last year, Louisiana expanded Medicaid. In 1 year, they saw a $317 million savings. So yes, we can afford to expand Medicaid. They also created 19,000 new jobs. And bet you their rural hospitals aren't on the brink of closure. So yes, we did actually vote to expand Medicaid last year. Brownback vetoed it. We were not able to override that veto. This year, Republican leadership ensured that that bill would not get to Jeff Collier's desk because Jeff is on the record as saying he will veto Medicaid expansion. So this is something that we can and will get done next year. We will expand it, and we will then be providing access to health care for 150,000 Kansans. We'll help our rural hospitals in particular, but we'll also expect to see about 7,000 high-quality, high-paying jobs brought to the state of Kansas. It's essential that we do that. It's fair, it's moral, and it's an economically wise thing to do. The dumbest thing we ever did in Kansas was not expand it when we had the chance. We have left over $2.5 billion back in Washington, D.C. to be distributed to other states for them to take care of their people and them to grow their economies. We will change that.
First of all, these are our tax dollars anyway, and it's not as if they sit in Washington, D.C. in a magic Kansas vault until we ask for them back at some future time. If we don't take them back and take advantage of that program, then we are losing out on our dollars anyway. Second, an argument I hear from Republicans all the time is, well, these are just deadbeats that don't want to work. 87% of the Medicaid expansion dollars that would have come back to Kansas would have gone to children and seniors. Children and seniors. And the remaining 13% was often going to people that worked 30 or sometimes 40 hours a week, but at minimum wage, so they still qualified for Medicaid. We need a better, articulate champion going around the state explaining to people, this is about taking care of providers. This is about taking care of the people that need these services. This is not about handouts, as you somehow suggest, for people that don't deserve them. This is a good program that's important. And then finally, as a person that comes from a rural part of the state, I know it's not just hospitals. It's a lot of times senior assisted living facilities. And having toured a number of hospitals and senior assisted living facilities in rural Kansas, many times they're co-located. And so the success and failure of both of those are intertwined. And those are the kinds of institutions, they're small. They can't let $150,000 or $200,000 roll over a couple of months while they wait for reimbursement. They need that money to stay afloat. And the people living there need that facility, or else there's nowhere else to go. And their families have to find a different place in a different community than the one in which they live. We need a governor that is committed to making sure that we articulate this message to the other Kansans that may not automatically understand or agree with us, because this needs to happen in the state. And it's not enough to simply say we were so close, but we couldn't get there. We've got to get there, and we've got to get it done.
Okay, from serving as mayor of the largest city in the state of Kansas, I've seen firsthand many of you that are in this room could have benefited from Medicaid expansion. Now, the former governor that's gone on to DC turned back the $2.5 billion that was actually granted to us because he didn't particularly care for the president. That is not the type of governor that you need here in the state of Kansas. You need someone that's going to make sure that you are the number one priority. And I've lived with you, I've worked with you, I've seen how you have suffered, and I've seen how seniors have actually suffered. I know how that we can actually help. And trying to get Medicaid for individuals here inside of our communities and our neighbors, that is the number one priority. And as governor, I'm tired of seeing individuals suffer. And it's not because they're not working, because I'm hearing this from all the way in western Kansas to northeastern Kansas. Everyone has to have Medicaid. And we all have a bad day every once in a while in our careers, and we don't have enough. And getting medical treatment is so expensive. 1 week in the hospital, a lot of times, can break most of us. So the thing is Medicaid expansion is one of those things that's something that's needed. As governor, you can be assured that day one, you and I will be having that discussion on how we can overturn this entire thing and making sure that you have adequate health care. You deserve it, we owe it to you, and we have to make it a priority. And not only that, but we owe you a report as to the progress that we're actually making, or whether we're not making progress, as opposed to letting you find out on your own. Hold us accountable, and that's what you need as a governor that is not afraid to come and talk to you, to tell you what's going on, and report to those that we work for. We have to have Medicaid expansion for all of for our seniors, and for our children, and for everyone that needs it.
Here's our fourth question, and Josh, you're up first. The 4th District participated in a special election for Congress in April of 2017. During the Democratic nomination process, the issue of women's health care was at the forefront of this debate. As governor, how will you address women's health care?
First, I would veto any new restrictions on women's reproductive rights. Second, my Lieutenant Governor, Katrina Lewison, will form a commission to focus on expanding women's health care across the state, with particular focus on the very rural parts of the state and the interurban parts that are underserved. And then finally, and I think that I am capable of doing this because I come from a rural area, we need a governor that can explain to the entire state that this state of Kansas should not be spending our time passing blatantly unconstitutional legislation like the font bill or the dismemberment bill that ties up our courts, spends unnecessary tax dollars for the state of Kansas that we definitely need in other places, and gives the state of Kansas a black eye when we need to be focused on far more different areas like K-12 public education. Those are my 3 initiatives, and I will see to it that we get them done.
Interesting. You know, you heard me tell you I have 4 children, 13 grandchildren. Half of them are male, half of them are female. And I don't believe that I have the right to tell them what they can do with their bodies. That's their business. I'll also tell you that my running mate believes the exact same thing that I do. And don't let there be any confusion in your minds as to our position as far as women's reproductive rights. The 2 of us are pro-choice and always have been. I can't say that for the others. I know what they say, but I also know what's printed. There is no deviation in our beliefs and our philosophies and our passion to make sure that you are represented. We have seen when individuals open the door to be able to take away individuals' rights, that door is open forever, and individuals will come through again at a later date. And the way that I see it, When we start talking about those types of things and we start talking about reproductive rights, then you're either going to be blue, and you're going to stick with it all the way, and there's no deviation. Or don't stand up and say that you are. Just tell the truth. Either you are or you're not. And so people can make the right decisions. And for us, and Brewer tomorrow, that's what's going to go.
Well, I want to thank Mayor Brewer for respecting my reproductive rights and my daughters. I have a 100% record on reproductive rights, both in the Senate and any votes that I've taken, but also all through my life. I am a firm believer that women have the right to make their own decisions in consult with their families and their doctors and their gods. That's for them to do and not for me to tell them how to do that. I don't think we go far enough when we say, I will not vote or I will veto any more restrictive legislation regarding women's rights in the state of Kansas. Kansas has almost nowhere else to go to restrict women's access. We are over the top, one of the very worst in the state. We have passed a number of unconstitutional laws. We restrict women's rights to access in ways that no other states do. So to just say, I will veto any more is not enough. We need to be proactive on this. We need to get women their rights back. And as the only woman in this race, I can guarantee you that it will be number one. Education first, but it will be very high on my radar screen because I have just watched over 50% of Kansans have their rights restricted, and I refuse to let that stand. I don't believe in discrimination against any group, and women are right there with me.
Okay, our fifth question. Carl, you're leading off here. And here we go. The Wichita Community Foundation hired Harvard-trained economist James Chung and his team to analyze government microdata and found the wage gap between women and men is large here. As governor, what will you do to recruit and retain college-educated women to start their careers not only in Wichita, but in all of Kansas?
Okay, you heard me talk about, we had independent experts come into the state of Kansas and talk to us about what the needs were and what we needed. Well, that was actually who I was talking about, is he had been here and made those recommendations. The thing is that every person deserves an opportunity to make an adequate wage. And everyone must be treated fairly, regardless of their gender. And we have been way behind here in the state of Kansas. We've been way behind here in Wichita, in corporate America. And if you're going to create an environment, we offer a lot of businesses incentives. But when you start offering incentives, is that part of the conversation? No. How are you paying females? How are you paying minorities? And are you doing it in a fair and equitable manner? That is not part of the conversation, and it should be part of the conversation because it's each and every one of you, your tax dollars that we're actually using here in the state of Kansas to attract new businesses. So we must go out and we must create an environment that's welcoming to everyone and demonstrate to everyone that they're invited and they're welcomed here in the state of Kansas and that you receive a fair opportunity. And you're judged by your skills and not by your gender or by the color of your skin. I would think that in today's environment, we would be having the discussion, we're having that type of discussion about gender and about race. But unfortunately, we are. But we can change all of that here. We can change all of that ourselves this next election. And that is by saying that this is important to us and we want everyone treated equally and respected, and if you're investing my dollars, are you doing it in a fair and equitable way where that everyone has a fair opportunity to grow? And we also owe it as we start going out to bring in new individuals and new businesses here and diversifying what we actually have. Creating an environment that's welcoming, and we're asking people and women to come to our community and tell them this is the place that you want to be here in the state of Kansas, and we'd love to have you here.
Well, again, I have to agree with Mayor Brewer. I really like his idea of basing incentives on do you pay people fairly. I think that's a great idea. I think I'll steal it. We have no doubt that women are underpaid for doing the same work that men. We know, I don't know exactly what the number they came up with here, but generally the number is 71 cents on the dollar. That is clearly unfair, and it's also economically stupid. Women make up a good 50% of the workforce these days. Why would we want to underpay that part of the workforce and make them less productive citizens and taxpayers? It makes no sense. It would make a lot of sense for us to be treating them on equal footing so that they can make equal contributions to our communities. One of my plans would be to work very closely with our business leaders across the state. We need to work, government can't operate alone. We really do need to work in partnership with the private sector, and I will do that. I will meet regularly with them as they're talking about policies and procedures that they're planning to put in place, and wages will obviously be one of them. And it won't be just women's wages, it'll be wages, period. I'm all for business making a profit, but I think that they help themselves and they help our communities if they pay people fairly, pay them a living wage so that they can support their families and make contributions back into the community. So we will deal with those kinds of issues. That will be right there with my other women's rights concerns.
One of the reasons that I chose Katrina Lewison as my running mate is that we were both, in many ways, largely 21st century families. Both she and her husband are professionals. They work outside of the home, and they balance their parenting kind of 50-50. Both my wife and I are professionals. We own our own businesses and do the same thing. We balance our parenting 50-50, and I learn from that experience. And so broadly, we as a state must be sending the message particularly to young people who are choosing where to live, less about what job they have and now more about what quality of life they have, that we are a state that treats everyone equally in the workforce. We have to send that message outside of the state, or we are going to forever struggle to attract the young talent that's so necessary to keep an economy growing here in Kansas. But then on the micro level, there are small things that we just need to do in Kansas that send the right message. There is a prayer room in the Capitol building. There is not a lactation room in the Capitol building. So my wife, who works in the Capitol, has to go down and sit in our car in the parking garage to pump, while there's an empty prayer room. And I'm sorry, I kind of thought we could pray anywhere in the state. This is a small fix, but it sends the right message. When I was the Secretary of Agriculture, I expanded a program at the department to allow young mothers that worked in the agency to bring their children to work up to 6 months of age. When we started it, everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a real problem. They're going to be a distraction. Guess what? It's great for the baby. It's great for the mother. And this was happening during the Great Recession, so we were doing reductions in force. It was a low morale time around the office. It was great for everyone in the office. If they were having a bad day, they'd pop in and see the baby. And around 6 months is about the time you need to move a child out of the workforce because they get mobile. But it was a great program that allowed young mothers the balance with work and life to stay in that job. I was proud to do it, and I look forward to expanding it to other state agencies.
Okay, so Kelly's up first for question number 6, and here we go. In 2015, the state of Kansas passed the constitutional carry law, which permits anyone who can legally own a gun to carry it in public, concealed, or openly without permit. Wichita Police Chief Gordon Ramsay has said that this law is hindering the ability of his police department to keep guns away from bad guys. Do you support constitutional carry? As governor, what steps would you like to take to work with law enforcement to help them feel safe while they are on duty?
Thank you. I have been a routine supporter of our Second Amendment rights in the state of Kansas. I do believe that law-abiding folks should have the right to carry and also the right to hunt. In terms of the constitutional carry bill that was passed, I actually did vote for that. Not long after that, though, I realized that that had gone way too far. And so since 2016, I have been voting to pull back on some of the loose ends on that particular bill. I voted to ban guns on campus in 2016. I voted to ban guns in our public hospitals, our community mental health centers, and our adult public care homes. I voted this past session to take guns from those with domestic abuse convictions. Also voted on a lot of other amendments that we offered, again to ban guns on campus, bump stocks, 3-day waiting periods, universal background checks, and more. We weren't able to get any of those other than the domestic violence and the public health hospitals covered, but I will tell you that progress is being made. When I voted to ban guns on campus in 2016, the vote was about 9 people to ban them and 31 to not ban them in the Senate. When we voted on that bill this year, that amendment, it was 2020. It died on a tie. So we are very, very close. And when I'm governor, what my plan is to convene the stakeholders here, law enforcement, mental health, public health, educators, parents, and students. And we will craft a gun sense policy for the state of Kansas, and I will use the governor's office and the bully pulpit to shepherd it through the legislature so that we can restore common sense to Kansas gun laws.
We lost common sense with Kansas gun laws when constitutional carry passed. I do not support it. And I was actually in the legislature when we first passed concealed and carry, but we put on normal restrictions, like 8 hours of training and the requirement to receive a permit from the state. And those were all removed when constitutional carry passed. Furthermore, most Democrats did not need to be surprised after the passage of constitutional carry that it went too far. They knew in 2015. Many people around the state were saying, why are we doing this? We have fairly sensible concealed and carry laws right now. Why remove all of the very normal restrictions to this and allow anyone to carry almost anywhere in the state of Kansas, especially when we know that once that legislation passes in the state, it's almost impossible to roll it back. So this is more than simply things that we can fix along the way. We should have stopped this when we had the chance at 2015, and we needed Democrats that knew that then and knew enough to stand up and say, no, this goes too far. And we had a lot of Democrats that did it. It was sad for me to watch outside of the process. In the meantime, on the other gun issues, I am very much against arming teachers in the classroom. I have 26 members of my family that are public school teachers, and that I tell people she's not here to defend herself. My mother-in-law, who's now retired from Shawnee Mission West, is the last human being on earth I would ever want to have a gun in a tense situation. And she would agree with me. She was trained to be a teacher. She doesn't want that responsibility. Most school shootings are either current or former students. She doesn't want to have to face that. There are other ways for us to make our schools safer, but we need a governor that can speak with clarity and conviction on turning back the gun laws that have been rolled back in the last 8 years.
Well, we have this conversation, we talk about Second Amendment rights. And I don't want you to think that I don't think individuals should have a weapon to be able to go hunting. In fact, when Second Amendment was done, it was done with muskets. We didn't have AR-15s. And that's where they've gotten this conversation confused. I strongly believe that we should have certain individuals should be allowed to have concealed carry, but go through the necessary training. And not everyone have an opportunity to be able to do that. I strongly believe that it's important that if law enforcement or someone sees that the person is not mentally capable, then they should have the right to take the weapon and remove it from that person's hands. If you've been convicted of domestic violence, you don't need a weapon. If you're not disciplined to keep your hands off of somebody else, then you're not disciplined to have a weapon. And I tell you, teachers are in school, and they're teachers because they want to be able to educate children. This is something they love doing. They have a passion for it. And so I want them to be there doing that with our most prized possession, our children. That's our most prized possession, because that's our future. I want them focused on getting an education and not worried about what's going to go on or what's going to happen at their particular school. I want them focused on education. I don't believe we should have guns in schools. I don't believe the teachers should have guns in schools. If this is something that we need, then we need to go and get our school resource officers and come up with a way of putting them back into schools so that they can provide adequate counseling that's needed to be able to address those issues. But there's no place for that in this community, and there's no place in the state. And as a governor, I'll tell you right now, because I was adamantly opposed when we started taking weapons that had been taken from crime and individuals had lost their lives, and they voted to put them back on the street and sell them to make a profit. Yeah. It's not worth it. It's not worth one life for the sale of a gun. And this is all about this. And I will stop this in government.
Okay, question 7 this evening, and we'll lead off with Josh. In 2017, the Wichita City Council approved an amended local marijuana ordinance that reduced penalties for possession of a small amount of marijuana. As governor, would you support local control measures to deal with marijuana reform? Do you support any reforms of marijuana laws statewide?
Yes and yes. Number one, I'm a strong proponent of local control on this issue or any other. These are Democratic elected officials. If they are getting support or interest from their local constituencies, the state ought to respect that. But on a state level, I see 3 important aspects. One, this is a quality of life issue for a lot of people that may be in chronic illness or a terminal illness or in chronic pain. 2, this is a criminal justice issue. We are filling our prisons with largely non-violent offenders. We can do better than that. And we need to be taking the measures to make sure that our prisons are there for violent offenders, not people that are engaging in something that's barely more dangerous than alcohol. And then 3, and the best tax is the one that somebody else pays, this is a revenue opportunity for the state of Kansas, and we don't need them. And when I look at what's happening, with Colorado already being legalized and Missouri largely headed toward legalization, we need a governor that's not going to hamstring our highway patrol, who's already saying, what do we do when I-70 becomes a giant conduit between Colorado and Missouri, and we have to deal with this each and every day. We need a state program for that, largely centered around decriminalization, so that we as a state can be prepared. And we've learned important lessons from Colorado, we're learning important lessons from around the rest of the country, but it's time that Kansas moves forward on this.
Well, certainly everyone here is from Wichita, so you know that if you already saw the petition years ago when it was passed, you saw my name on the petition, probably along with my family's name also. So the thing is, we're talking about marijuana. And so it's one of those things that what Josh said, there is an economic opportunity for us to be able to do that. We're having issues with healthcare, we're having issues with education, we're having issues with infrastructure, and build up. Those are dollars. If we create an additional industry and diversify what we have, those are dollars that we can actually use to be able to help and to be able to improve those. And if you look at it, if we're as successful as Colorado is, a lot of our problems that I get will go away. And we don't have to wait 10 or 20 years to be able to make that happen. So we should take it very serious, and we should look at legalizing marijuana. And certainly for medical, I mean, that didn't take a rocket science to figure that out. We should have did that years ago. We should have created an environment where that was already available for individuals, because we all know somebody that has seizures, that has some type of illness or something that can actually benefit from it. But look at those. But then take it a step farther and start looking at hemp. It's something they grow here in the state of Kansas easily with a very little water resource. And we can actually use that to create, to do materials and building things and things of that nature and road. That's another product that we can actually sell. It's about diversifying our economy and then coming up with a smart way of being able to do it. If we address individuals, you use it very similar to the way with the same rules we have before as alcohol is concerned, or any other substance, and that is put penalties against them. But I don't believe that incarcerating an individual for a small amount or for a seed, incarcerating them in jail, because that costs each and every one of us $150 a day just to keep that person there, just to wait on them to go to court. That's unacceptable. It's not good business. And before we start turning around and signing on the dotted line to build a new prison, let's address that issue first and how we can keep people out of prison.
Yeah, I've been in the legislature for 14 years. It took us 8 years to pass the hemp bill. Hemp having no marijuana and no THC. So I can tell you it's a rough road. If we want to make progress on the legalization of medical marijuana or marijuana generally, we're going to have to do something about the people we send to the legislature. I think it was 2 years ago, John Wilson, a representative in the House, had a bill that all it would do would be to legalize the use, very regulated and controlled, for CBD oils, which are really essential for kids with Dravet syndrome, which is, many seizures, violent seizures all day long. We've had people leaving the state of Kansas and moving to Colorado because there they can get that for their children. We could not get that bill passed. We do need to take a really serious look at particularly medical marijuana and see what we can do. But we won't be able to get anything done unless we put some different people in the legislature. And so I ask you to give serious consideration as you're looking at who you're going to vote for the State House. Find out where they are and at least make sure they're reasonable and open to discussion. Because the mayor's right, we are wasting millions of dollars incarcerating these folks who have done really nothing criminal. What we ought to be investing in, if anything, would be treatment programs. We've got it all backwards. We put a ton of money into incarceration, very little into treatment. And that's a switch that we really need to make. But it's going to be incumbent upon Kansans who want this to make sure that you elect people who will vote the way that you want them to vote. Because until you do, we're going to spend another 8 years talking about hemp plus. So please do that. I think it's important. Kansans want it. Many Kansans need it. And it would save us a boatload of money.
All right, our eighth question. Here we go. A majority of counties within the 4th District of Kansas are considered rural. As governor, what would you do to attract jobs to the rural parts of Kansas so people can start careers and raise families there?
As mayor of the city of Wichita, I had a wonderful opportunity to be the representative for the Kansas League of Municipalities, and I represented all the cities in the state of Kansas. And it was during the recession, so I had to help them to be able to grow their communities and how to be able to survive, during that recession. You know, as we start looking at what it is that we need to grow the communities, they all wanted schools, they wanted healthcare. They don't want to travel 100 miles to get healthcare. So we have to do, it's kind of a threefold portion. One, address the education issue and create better education, allow them to be able to make the determination whether they're going to shut their schools down or not, or whether they're going to consolidate their schools, and make sure that they have adequate funding and adequate teachers. Secondly, taking it a step farther, is come up with an environment that encourages professionals to go to those particular communities, such as teachers and doctors. Provide an opportunity to those that are just coming out of school, that they go to these communities, they teach or they practice medicine, and they stay for an X period of time that the tuition is waived. Give them that opportunity. I know that Brownback tried giving them $500 to go do something of that nature, to go build a house or something of that nature. That was the silliest thing I ever heard. That wasn't a true investment. We've got to do that. But then taking it a much step farther, like we have done in many of these particular areas in the larger urban areas. Go to rural communities and start coming up with regional economic development plans. Bring everyone to the table. You, the corporate people, the businesses that we actually have there, the policymakers. Bring them to the table and come up with a strategy and a plan as to what is needed in that particular community, where are they lacking, and then that gives them something to be able to go and a goal to be able to work after. But as governor, it's my job, the lieutenant governor's job, and also the Secretary of Commerce's job to go and make sure that we provide them with every single resource to ensure that they are successful, and we're making sure that the word is getting out to every single citizen that's in that regional area, how progress is being made, or whether it's not. The last thing we want is another one of these Brownback tax plans to come up and then we wait 7 years to determine that it's not failing. When most of us felt that the first day, the first year. We have to do some things differently, and it's about inclusion and making sure that everyone has a voice and create economic development and regional economic development plans.
Okay, rural Kansas needs a lot of what the rest of Kansas needs. We need to invest in education. That's very important. No schools, no community. We need to invest in healthcare, no hospitals, no communities. We need to invest in infrastructure, particularly roads. You know, unless there are 4-lane highways going down into our rural areas, you're not going to be able to attract a company to come to your town or a company to stay and grow. So those are the 3 fundamentals that we have to do. One of the things that I have done already in my campaign, knowing full well that rural economic development will be a very high priority in a Kelly administration, is that I have selected as my lieutenant governor a Wichita native, Lynn Rogers, who's standing right back there. Now, Lynn is known probably best in Wichita for his 16 years on your school board. But Lynn also spent 30 years as an agricultural banker, traveling all over rural Kansas. Nobody knows rural Kansas and the economic issues for rural Kansas better than Lynn Rogers, and he will be a partner in this administration, making sure that we're focusing on those things. Lynn used to be the treasurer for my campaign. When we moved him over to be lieutenant governor candidate, we put in his place a young man called David Tolan. David is a 7th generation Iowan, Allen County, came back from Washington, D.C. To run an operation. It's an award-winning operation called Thrive Allen County. And what its mission is to develop rural economic communities. And he's now taken that, he's done a lot of work in Allen County, and he's taking that show on the road. So he's providing a model for other communities to look at in ways that they can make their communities more vibrant. There is no one size fits all. Every community is different. They'll have to appeal to each of them in a different way. But we're bringing people onto this campaign, and we'll bring them into the administration to do exactly that. Focus on our rural communities, help them grow. You know, Kansas is an agricultural state. Yeah, I know we have a lot of people living in urban areas, but it is part of our culture, it's part of our past, and it must be part of our future.
We got my meander up a bit. Sorry, Senator Rogers, you are really, really nice, so I don't take this the wrong way. But if anybody wants to check, down the street my pickup's parked. I've got musk thistle in the back of it because I was out this morning looking at my wheat fields and I saw several plants sticking up. And so I got the gloves out and I got out and I yanked them out of the ground. And I was thinking about comments that were made, that were also just made, about the Wichita ag lender banker knowing the most about agriculture in rural Kansas. Because you know what? My banker is hugely important to me. I couldn't exist without the entire network that helps my farm run, but they're not out there at 7:30 in the morning, yanking out musk thistle, looking at how dry that soil is, thinking, am I going to make it? They're not out there looking at my fields, thinking, this year may be the one that might put us under. And I have to deal with that day in and day out in rural Kansas. Here's my plan. Two things. You have to invest in higher education. When I see the bright spots happening in rural Kansas, they are largely entrepreneurial activity that is spun out of our region's institutions. I talk about surefire agriculture in Atwood, Kansas. There's three guys that came out of K-State with an idea of how to deliver fertilizer better behind the drill. That company, we could never as a state develop an incentive program that attracts a surefire ag from another state to Atwood, Kansas. It's never going to happen. But we have to provide the higher education institutions to have those businesses spin out of those. The second are specific infrastructure investments that we need to make, more than simply expanding our roads. I'm talking about things like the intermodal. The intermodal that happened in Gardner and Johnson County fundamentally altered how we as a state operate as a point of entry in the United States. We're in the center of the United States. We now ship in containers all the way back to the Pacific Rim because people have figured out a better system, and that's because we have the foresight to create an intermodal and fundamentally alter things for the next 50 years. We need another intermodal in Kansas, and we need an administration that understands how important it is.
Senator Kelly is up first for our ninth question, and here we go. Young people, people of color, and single women are historically underrepresented in our elections. The state of Kansas has made it even more difficult for these groups to engage in the democratic process in recent years. What steps will you take to ensure all citizens of Kansas have an equal opportunity to vote?
Beat Chris Kobach. You're absolutely right. The people of Kansas have been disenfranchised in ways that are just far beyond anyone else's recognition. Chris Kobach is the only Secretary of State in the entire country who has prosecutorial powers, so that he can call up these mostly older white Republican guys for voter fraud. And take them to court. So we need to have a different Secretary of State. And by the way, the Democrats have a great candidate, Brian McClendon. Get to know him. He is fabulous, and he will change the way that office operates. In terms of engaging people, I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of engagement going on. All on a grassroots level. We've got the League of Women Voters out there doing some very serious voter registration. And one of the things that they're doing and other groups are doing that are getting around the Kobach restrictions is they're using an app called ksvotes.org. And this is actually an app that I believe Brian McClendon, our Secretary of State candidate, developed. And what this does, it allows our people to register to vote using the federal form. The court ruled that we have to accept the federal form. The federal form does not require all of that identification and whatnot that Kobach put in on the regular Kansas form. So remember that when you're talking to people and they want to register to vote, ksvotes.org. It's the federal form. It'll get you registered without all the crazy stuff that Chris Kobach wanted people to do. So that's one of the ways, is just make sure we get that out there. We've got all the student activity that's going on because of the gun issues in our schools. those students are out there registering to vote. Every event that I go to, whether it's the walkout or it's the Wear Orange, those kids and other folks are registering voters. They are collecting that. They're getting those young people to vote. And that's what we need to do, is just keep doing it and bypass all of Kobach's crazy.
So I think one of the ways we can get young people engaged in democratic politics is to have a ticket that represents the future of the state of Kansas. It draws young people in. I think it's hugely important. Number two, Democrats. I think since this is a Democratic forum, you're probably largely Democrats. We got to fix the party. We have to make it easier for people to vote in our primary. We should have an open primary system. Most millennials that come in and register to vote are registering as independents. We need to make it as easy as possible for them to come in and take part in our primary system, because otherwise they simply drift away and then they don't vote in the general election cycle. Number three, I think we need to think bigger. I think we should think bigger. We should think beyond the simple ticky-tack problems that have been thrown up for our voting in the state. I am a strong proponent of automatic voter registration. It is goofy. It's goofy. But you go in and you sign up for your driver's license, and they have paperwork available if you would maybe like to sign up to vote. If they are signing you up to have your driver's license, just automatically enroll you to vote. They should have it be automatic enrollment to vote. And then finally in here, this is kind of exciting. We're going to employ the lightning round, sort of going back to rebuttal, so I'm not sure how you want to handle it. But Secretary Kobach was not able to simply implement his voter ID law. He had to have it passed through the legislature. And that passed in 2011. And I'm actually not entirely sure how Senator Kelly voted on it, but I'd love to find out, because that was the critical moment when we began to see problems in our voter system. And if legislators voted for that, it's going to be very hard to stand up against Chris Kobach in a debate in the general election if he can turn and say, actually, thank you for giving me my signature legislative achievement in 2011.
Well, I'm probably not the person that they should be asking about that. You know, we've experienced this for over 50 years or more, here in the state of Kansas, where we went through forms of intimidation, and right now Kobach is focusing on the Latinos, but I also go in, as I travel the state, and I tell them, you need to get serious about this, because particularly when you're talking about African Americans or anyone else, because tomorrow it's going to be you, if he ever gets what he wants. It's going to be you. Don't even get it confused. And I have no intentions, as governor of the state of Kansas, to ever allow us to go back. We're going to go back, and we're going to go back as a whole community, and respecting everybody's rights and who everyone is. And the way that we're going to have to do it, we're going to have to do some things, just as you heard Swati talking about individuals getting their driver's license and being able to register to vote during that time frame. There is nothing wrong with that. They don't want us going to the polls, and they don't want us going out and voting, and we must get past that. But the other portion is I've been definitely going out and educating many of the communities that many can't go into, that I am able to go into, and to tell them, your vote does count. And if you want to make a difference in Kansas and in your communities, then you must go to the polls and you must vote. There are a lot of elections that have been won by one vote that changed the dynamics of an entire state. You must do that. And it's our duty to go out and to be able to register to vote. But we have to educate those individuals that can. I strongly believe when we start talking about the younger generation, I embrace them. I love having them there at the table and giving us new ideas, new views, new opinions, because a lot of it fresh and some of it we don't understand. But that's how we diversify, that's how we grow. And when others see this in other states and other countries, they make a decision, this is going on in the state of Kansas, and this is where I want to be. That was how we were able to engage in a lot of stuff that you see that's going on in downtown Wichita. That's how we did it during that time frame, as we brought young people to the table, the next generation, tell us what you want, how do you want this, and gave them an opportunity to have a voice. Give them an opportunity to have a voice. Let's respect their voice, and let's bring everyone in, but to be able to educate them about the importance of voting is very important. I tell everyone, talk to somebody, anybody you come in contact with, and ask them if they're registered to vote. And if they're not, tell them how to get registered to vote. But their vote is important.
And rules are rules. Senator Kelly, Mr. Swati referred to a point that you had made earlier. Our rule tonight is if another candidate is referred to in an answer, that candidate is allowed 30 seconds for rebuttal. Would you like to take that?
You know, I think if Josh wants to talk about voting records, then he needs to be open and honest about his own voting record. When he left the legislature, he had voted consistently with the NRA. He voted 11 times to restrict women's access to health care. He even overrode Governor Sebelius' veto of those bills. So if we want to start getting down in the weeds, we can go ahead and do that. And I think what we ought to be doing is talking about who we are now, what we plan to do now, and how we plan to take this state forward. That's what I'm focused on, and that's what I'll continue to focus on.
Okay, here's our 10th question, and then we'll have 2-minute closing statements. What qualities do you possess that makes you the best governor for the state of Kansas? What characteristics does your lieutenant governor possess that will make you the best team to lead our state? Okay, John.
It's been a hard 8 years. I think we all sense it. Sometimes we sense it just in our K-12 system, which is usually our first invitation into how the state is operating. But all of us know that it's beyond that. It is beyond simply K-12 public education. Our state is in trouble. And we need an administration, and the Democrats need a ticket that can communicate across the state. When I came into the legislature, I served in a Democratic caucus of 45 members. We represented all or part of 44 counties around the state. There are now 40 members in the House Democratic caucus. They represent all or part of only 14 counties. 14 counties in the state. We have been reduced to only the urban parts of the state. We must have a candidate that can communicate across the entire state. In 2014, which was a must-win for this party against the incumbent Governor Sam Brownback, we won 7 counties. 7. The furthest west was Riley. If we are not competing in the western half of the state, we're going to lose again. And we're not. You didn't come out this evening if you didn't know how important it is for us to win. Katrina Lewis and I represent the future of the state of Kansas. We represent the future of the state of our own party. We are parents. We have young children. We look at them. It's one of the reasons we got into this race. And we say we will not stop until we win this. We win it for the Democratic Party, but we win it for the state of Kansas because we know how important it is to move this state forward. And furthermore, we know how important it is to run statewide, and we're the only campaign that can do it. And do it in a way that unites this state so that we can put the 8 years that have just happened behind us and move forward. The Swati Lewison ticket is the one you want if you want a bright, positive vision for the future.
Well, we're talking about, the future of Kansas and where we're actually going to go, and and how to get out. And it has to do with rural Kansas, urban Kansas. And when you start looking, we know for a fact that in western Kansas, they know who Carl Brewer is. Without a doubt, they know. And they like what Carl Brewer did in the city of Wichita as mayor of the largest city in the state of Kansas. And those that are Democrat like the idea of a Democrat winning by 69%. And you know, to validate that, the Hayes University, the Dockey Institute, they actually done a survey, 3 surveys. And the most name recognition throughout the entire state of Kansas with Democrat was Brewer. The one that they thought that they, between Republicans and independents, that they thought that they could work with and they could get along with and could provide leadership was Brewer. It's been consistent. And that is because I believe in inclusion and I believe in using common sense. But even furthermore, when I selected a running mate, I wanted somebody that had been in the trenches, had looked individuals in the faces, worked with communities, done the exact same thing I did, and that's why I ended up getting Chris Morrow. Chris, stand up. He's here. Because he's with me. He is with Brewer. Chris Morrow. That is a former mayor that has helped this community through difficult times. And we're looking at, and that's what we need. We just need somebody that has the experience, that has the courage, and it's not part of the establishment. It's time for us to start bringing in new ideas, new faces, new vision. And certainly, Chris and I strongly believe that inclusion means individuals of different races, different backgrounds, different beliefs, but certainly, if we're going to have a vision for the future, we must bring the next generation in and include them in the process and they not be ignored. And we've had so much of that going on, and now is our opportunity to say stop, enough is enough, and we will make sure that we lead the way. And not only that, if Chris doesn't step up, my granddaughter, that's why she's here, she's watching Chris. She's saying that, hey, I'll step in. So it's about, we have to have new leadership here in the state of Kansas. And we are here to be able to provide that to you. And new leadership that everyone is going to be confident with, but Democrats can't do it alone. It's going to require Democrats, Republicans, and independents both working collectively together. And there's only one group that has a proven track record of being able to do that and bring everyone together to work for the best interests of everyone, and that's Brewer and Morrow.
Well, I of course think I have the best lieutenant governor candidate. You know, Kansas has been going through a world of hurt these past 8 years. The entire state has been dismantled. There are problems everywhere you look. This is really a time when we need a strong, experienced, steady leader at the helm who knows where the problems are and knows how to fix them, and will bring people like Lynn Rogers on board to partner in that endeavor, because it is so critical and it is so serious what's going on in our state right now. This is not time to experiment. This is time to hire tried, tested, and true. People who have been on the front lines during the last 8 years, who have watched what's going on, who have fought against what's going on, and who have the relationships within the system, in the legislature, to get to work on day one to start putting our state back together again. You know, being governor is not a one-person show. It's got to be teamwork. You can't get anything done unless you can bring the legislature to bear. You have to partner with them, you have to work with them. And I can tell you that in the 14 years I've been in the Senate, I have formed relationships with people in both parties, across the aisle, and that we've worked very closely together to form a moderate majority to get good public policy passed. We went through those dark years when Brownback took out all the moderates, but we're back now, and we have formed another moderate majority, and we are starting to do things like undo the Brownback tax experiment. That's what we need to do. We can't get off track now and try something different. We need to stay steady on the course and really work hard with experienced, steady, knowledgeable people who can attract other good people to come to this state and help us put it back together.
Okay, we move on to our closing statements. Brewer, Kelly, Swati. That's our order for closing statements, keeping with our format. 2 minutes for our closing statements, and we will begin with Mr. Carl Brewer.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming out tonight and taking time out of your busy schedules and after a long, hard day today, and getting an opportunity to visit with the various different Democrats, the candidates that are actually here. And so certainly, this is going to be about you picking who's going to be able to lead you and who's going to be able to represent you for the next 4 years. And when you start looking at what's there, it's going to require someone, as you heard me say, that certainly can get individuals and bring individuals to the table, but has a vision and is not opposed to answering to each and every one of you. It's going to require somebody to be able to do that. Someone that can certainly bring Democrats and independents to the table. Not someone that thinks they can, somebody that can truly do it. And we've done it here. That's why I ended up winning 2 elections. And I run with 69%. That there is proven. I come from corporate America. I've served in the military 21 years. I've served on general staff. I've worked my way from the bottom up, whether it be in corporate America or whether it be in the military. And I started out, when you start talking about politics, I started out as a community activist, just like many of you, concerned about what was happening in my neighborhood, what was happening in my community, what was happening in my city, and I knew that we could do better. And I wanted to make sure that we had a voice. And that's what you're going to get with Brewer and Morrow as the next governors of the state of Kansas. We both have a proven track record that we can get all parties to work together and focus on what's in the best interest of each and every one of your families and your households. We both have the experience that we use common sense when making decisions. And we both are willing to be able to go and to come and talk to you. Those are the things that are important in being able to address the various issues. But also when you can't connect the dots, we connect the dots for you to help you be able to understand it. But it's about somebody that's committed and that's passionate. And the only way we're going to do that is bring new leadership into the state of Kansas. And that's Brewer and Morrow, that's firm, that's committed, and making sure that we respect everyone's rights. And make sure that we represent you the way you want to be represented. Remember, Brewer and Morrow for the next governor, and we look forward to serving you.
I want a Democrat governor in that office in January. It's a must. And I'm going to tell you now, this was not on my bucket list. I had not planned to run for governor. As most of you know, I got into this race very late. But it was because I was concerned that we needed to have a candidate who could get across the finish line. I have run 4 times for the state senate in a very Republican district. I think my district is about plus 10 Republican. I took out a Republican incumbent the first time around. And I did that because I campaigned smart, I campaigned hard, and I did all the things somebody needs to do, including ignoring my campaign strategies and running my own kind of campaign. He told me, forget about going to Muncie County. I had all of it. He said, there are no votes out there, don't worry about it. I said, Joe, that's wrong. I went out to Muncie County, I knocked on every door in every little town in Muncie County, and if I had not done that, I would not have won. By the time the second race came around, Muncie County was giving me 50-50 of their vote. They came to know me, they came to trust me. I can attract, when I'm on the ballot, I can attract, obviously, I hope all the Democrats, but I will also attract moderate Republicans. Any Democrat who tells you you can win without moderate Republican support really can't do math. There are not enough Democrats in the state of Kansas to elect a governor. You must be able to attract independent and moderate voters. And I have a track record of doing that. I have relationships in the legislature and that go far beyond that with moderate Republicans all over the state. They will vote for me. They will not vote for Chris Kobach, and they will not vote for Jeff Collier. They will vote for me, and I can be your next governor.
I echo the sentiments of Mayor Brewer. Thank you for coming out. This is a Friday evening. It's hot. There's a lot of other things you could rather be doing. You could go to Riverfest, which is way more fun than coming to here. So I appreciate it, and I know we all do. And I also want to say I'm proud to be here with my fellow candidates. This is an important election cycle. It's very rare for the Democratic Party to have a primary, so it's a healthy thing for us. But I don't think we can lose sight of the end goal, winning in November. And I love that we brought up math in the final because it's so important to talk about math. Senator Kelly won her first election cycle for Senate by less than 5 percentage points. She then, I think won her most recent race by less than 5 percentage points. The first time I ran in my district, which was 52% Republican, 25% Independent, and 23% Democratic, I was 22. I did my first interview in my dorm room at Sterling College. I beat a two-term incumbent Republican, 66 to 34. That's not a win, that's a tremendous. And that's what it takes. That's what it takes for a Democrat to win in this state. It's hard. It is hard to win in the state, and it's really hard to win in Western Kansas, and you have to work harder. And you have to work smarter, and you have to have family in 34 counties, which is an entire third of the state, which I do. And it still is going to be a squeaker, but that's what it takes to win. And then you have to add the most exciting, most dynamic, most incredible young leader in Katrina Lewison to that ticket so that we can both go around the state and say, this is the future. And it is coming from the Democratic Party. And you don't need to be afraid of the rest of the state of Kansas. We will lead you well. You can trust us, and we will provide a positive direction that you can be proud of and that you can rest easy knowing that your children will have a fantastic future. JoshuaSwati.com. Follow us, support the campaign. We'd love to have your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out. Do we have some wonderful candidates? Let me tell you how you can help. This is recorded this evening on Facebook, so if you go to Kansas 4th District Democrats, you can forward that out to all your friends. It's been a wonderful debate. If you want to stick around, I'm sure the candidates would like to shake your hand. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. This debate was sponsored by the 4th District Democrats.